The air in Redemption Springs was thick with grit and broken promises as Eliza Whitlock sat frozen on a weathered crate outside the shuttered general store. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Her wedding dress, once white with hope, now dragged in the dust of the frontier. Tears had carved pale trails down her dirt-streaked face. It was 1878, and she had come west chasing a future that seemed to vanish the moment she arrived. 3 days earlier, the stagecoach had left her with nothing but a small trunk and a letter from her intended Grant Calloway, a rancher who had wooed her by post for months. His last words had promised he would meet her at the church, marry her, and carry her to his homestead. But Grant never appeared. Day 1, she'd clung to eager hope. Day 2 gnawed at her nerves, and by the 3rd evening she could no longer deny what Martha Lou Finnegan, the boarding house keeper, had tried to gently tell her. Out here men vanished, without explanation, swallowed by accident, outlaw, or wilderness. "Miss." A deep voice cut into her sorrow. Eliza startled, looking up. A tall man crouched beside her crate dust, clinging to worn leather chaps. Black curls spilled from under a broad hat, his face bronzed and lined from a life under the sun. But it was his piercing blue eyes, steady with concern, that held her. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice trembling. He glanced at her gown, its hem gray with dirt. "Doesn't look that way to me, ma'am." He swept his hat off. "Name's Colt Abernathy. Folks mostly call me Colt." Eliza clutched her little bag closer. "I'm waiting for someone. Been waiting a spell, I'd reckon." His tone wasn't sharp, just plain spoken. "Sun's setting. Ain't safe for a lady to be left out here come nightfall." Stars began pricking the darkening sky. Eliza tasted salt on her lips. "He was supposed to meet me 3 days ago." Colt's eyes narrowed in understanding. "Your intended?" She nodded, voice gone faint. "Grant Calloway. He's got a cattle place north of here." Colt's jaw tightened. She knew before he spoke the words would break her. "Miss, I hate to say it, but Calloway sold that spread 2 weeks back. Word is he lit out for California with the money." The world pitched beneath her. She'd given up her savings, her life in Philadelphia, for a man who had thrown her aside without a thought. "You must be mistaken," she whispered. "He wrote, we were to be married." Colt's roughened hand brushed her sleeve, hesitant but steady. "Wish I was wrong, but I've been working that ranch these past 10 days for the new owner, Virgil Kane." A sob broke free before she could stop it. 3 days of waiting had been cruel, but this truth crushed the last fragile shard of hope. She had nowhere to turn, no fare east, no kin waiting for her back home. Colt shifted, uneasy at her tears, yet unwilling to leave her there. "You got a place to stay, Martha Lou Finnegan's boarding house," she managed, "but I can only pay for 1 more night." He rose to his full height and offered his calloused hand. "Then let me walk you there. These streets aren't kind after dark." Eliza hesitated, then slipped her hand into his. His grip was strong, warm, lifting her gently to her feet. The simple dress she had stitched for her wedding whispered around her boots. "My trunk," she murmured, pointing to the crate. "I'll take it." Colt hefted it under one arm as if it weighed nothing. "This is all I have left," she confessed. "All a body really needs," he answered. They walked in silence through a town emptying into twilight. Drunken cowhands staggered from the saloon, and Colt shifted closer, his presence a shield. She noticed then the revolver at his hip worn like a trusted tool rather than a threat. "Been here long?" she asked, grasping for words to drown out her despair. "Born here," he said. "Left for the war when I was 17. Came back after never found reason enough to leave." The mention of war drew her eyes to him anew, but the shadow on his face warned her not to pry further. Ahead, The white clapboard boarding house came into view, its windows glowing against the dusk. On the porch, Martha Lou Finnegan swept with determined strokes, pausing as she saw them approach. "Oh, Miss Whitlock," I was starting to worry. Her gaze flicked from Colt to Eliza's tear-stained face. "Colt Abernathy bringing my lodger home, evening, ma'am. Just making sure Miss Whitlock got back safe." The landlady's stern look softened. "So you've heard about Grant Calloway?" Eliza nodded, tears burning again. "Mr. Abernathy told me. Shameful business." Martha Lou opened the door wide. "Come inside, child, you look worn through." Colt set the trunk on the porch. "Mrs. Finnegan, a word in private." While they stepped aside, Eliza collapsed into a chair, too spent to move. Their voices murmured low, indistinct. Minutes later they returned. Colt tipped his hat. "Miss Whitlock, Mrs. Finnegan'll see to you tonight. I'll stop by come morning if that suits." Before Eliza could ask why, Martha Lou spoke gently. "Colt's offered to help sort things out for you. He's one of the good ones, dear." Eliza Whitlock lifted her gaze to the cowboy who had stumbled upon her in her darkest hour. "Thank you, Mr. Abernathy," she whispered. He touched the brim of his hat. "Colt, if you please." "Get some rest, Miss Whitlock. Tomorrow's a brand new day." With long strides, he disappeared into the night, leaving Eliza staring after him, wondering how a dawn could ever feel new when all her dreams had been left in ruins. Inside, Martha Lou Finnegan ushered her straight to the kitchen and pressed a steaming cup of tea into her hands. "That young man paid another week's board for you," she said without ceremony. Eliza nearly spilled her drink. He did what Martha Lou nodded firmly. "Said you need time to get your feet under you. Promised he'd help you find work, too. Not many men would do such a thing for a stranger. I can't accept charity," Eliza murmured, though in truth she had no choice. "Then call it a loan if it makes it easier," Martha Lou replied. "Colt Abernathy doesn't have much himself, but what he's got, he shares. Always been that way, even when he was just a boy." She patted Eliza's hand. "Besides, this town needs decent women like you. Most who pass through are already spoken for, or end up at Velvet Annie's place." The hint was clear enough. Eliza shivered at the thought. "What skills do you have, child?" Martha Lou asked. "I can sew, I can cook, and I taught at a little school back in Philadelphia before heading west." "Well, that's something. We haven't had a proper teacher since Catherine May Dillard married Jonah Pike last spring. The council's been hunting for someone to fill that post. For the first time since Colt's grim news about Grant Calloway, a spark of possibility lit inside her. "Do you think they'd consider me with Colt vouching for you? I'd say it's likely. His sister's married to the sheriff." Eliza sipped her tea, turning over this unexpected turn in her mind. "Why would he help me? He doesn't even know me." Martha Lou's eyes grew thoughtful. "That boy came back from the war quieter, watchful. But he's always had a good heart. Likely saw someone hurting and couldn't walk away." She gathered the empty cups. "Now off to bed. Tomorrow's soon enough to make plans." Upstairs in the small rented room, Eliza at last slipped out of her wedding gown, folding it carefully into her trunk. She had stitched it with trembling hope, believing in a man who'd vanished like smoke. Stretched out on the narrow bed, she stared at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow might bring in a land where husbands disappeared, but strangers offered kindness. Morning arrived with the clatter of hooves and wagon wheels outside. Eliza dressed in her second-best gown, a sensible blue cotton that had weathered the trail better than her heart. Martha Lou served flapjacks and coffee, laying out options for work in Redemption Springs. The general store might need a hand, and Dolores Lola Ramirez, the dressmaker, is always after skilled fingers. Then there's the school job once the council gives the word. Eliza nodded, grateful though still dazed by how swiftly her world had shifted. "I should find something right away." Morning, ladies. Colt Abernathy filled the doorway, hat in hand. His dark hair was damp, his shirt fresh beneath a worn leather vest. Right on time, Martha Lou said with approval. Sit, have some coffee while I pack lunch for you both. Oh, I couldn't, Eliza began. Nonsense, the landlady cut her short. You'll be busy enough today. Colt, tell her what you've arranged. He sat across from her, those blue eyes steady. I spoke with my brother-in-law last night, the sheriff. He's calling the council together this afternoon to meet you about the teaching post. Eliza's heart leapt, then sank. But I've no papers, no references with me. They'll wire Philadelphia if need be, Colt assured. Sheriff Amos Kincaid was mighty interested when I told him you'd been a teacher back east. This town's growing plenty of children needing schooling. That's wonderful, but I'll still need work until it's settled. Already seen to that. Lola Ramirez needs help with a rush order wedding dresses for the O'Hara twins. You said you can sew yes quite well. Good. She's expecting you this morning. He accepted coffee from Martha Lou. After that, we'll meet the council. Then I figured you might want to see the schoolhouse. It's been shut up a while. Eliza studied him over the rim of her cup. In daylight, she noticed a thin scar trailing his jaw beneath a day's stubble. There was a steadiness in him she found comforting after the betrayal that had left her adrift. Why are you doing this for me, Mr. Abernathy, Colt, he said gently. And because it needs doing. No one ought to be left stranded, not in a place like this. Something in his voice carried the weight of personal memory. Well, I'm truly grateful, Eliza said softly. And I'll repay the loan as soon as I can. No rush. He drained his cup and stood. You ready to see Redemption Springs? That day unfolded unlike any Eliza had ever known. The town that had felt so hostile in her lonely hours now opened itself through Colt's introductions. Dolores Lola Ramirez, who had followed her husband west during the gold rush years, welcomed Eliza Whitlock with warmth once Colt Abernathy explained her plight. So you were set to marry. Grant Calloway. Lola shook her head. That man ordered a fine suit, then lit out without paying. You're better off without the likes of him. Her little shop overflowed with bolts of cloth and half-finished garments. She quickly set Eliza to stitching embroidery for the O'Hara twins' wedding gowns. Steady hands, Lola remarked with approval after watching a few careful stitches. Come back tomorrow. I can use you at least 3 days a week. From there, Colt walked her to the mercantile, the post office, even the small clapboard church where she had expected to be wed. Everywhere they went, folks tipped their hats to Colt and offered Eliza polite curiosity once they learned she was Calloway's forsaken bride. People out here look after their own, Colt explained, as they made their way toward the sheriff's office for her council interview. Even for strangers, Eliza asked. Especially for strangers, he said. Everyone's roots start elsewhere. Even the ones born here came from parents who traveled the same road. He stopped facing her. Listen, the council's made up of good men, but they'll want the truth. How much of your story do you want me to tell? Eliza steadied herself. The truth is fine. I've nothing to be ashamed of. Colt nodded. No, you don't. Inside the town council sat Sheriff Amos Kincaid, stern and deliberate, his blue eyes a reminder of Colt's bloodline. The mercantile owner, a cattle rancher, and Dr. Tobias Mercer, the town's only physician. They listened as Eliza told of her years teaching back in Philadelphia. Why leave that post? Dr. Mercer asked. She straightened her back. I came west to marry. I answered an advertisement in the paper, and after 8 months of letters, Mr. Calloway sent for me. Amos Kincaid spoke gently. We're aware of what happened, Miss Whitlock. I'm sorry you were deceived. Thank you, Sheriff, but I'm not looking behind me. I need work, and I hear you need a teacher. The council exchanged glances. School won't open till September, the storekeeper noted. I've already secured part-time work with Mrs. Ramirez. Eliza replied, and Mrs. Finnegan has extended my stay. From the doorway, Colt finally spoke. Gentlemen, Miss Whitlock isn't asking for charity. She's offering her skills. Teachers are rare as rain out here. We'd be foolish to turn her away. The sheriff gave a slow nod. Well, said Colt. He turned to Eliza. Would you step outside while we confer? In the hallway, Eliza paced, nerves raw. Colt leaned against the wall, calm, as if waiting were second nature. You did fine in there, he said. I hope it was enough. If not teaching, there'll be other work. But I reckon this one's yours. His quiet certainty steadied her. When they were called back, Sheriff Kincaid rose. Miss Whitlock, we'd like to offer you the schoolhouse position beginning September 1st. Salary is $40 a month with lodging above the school. We'll wire Philadelphia to confirm your credentials, but barring that the post is yours. Relief swept through Eliza like a cool desert breeze. Thank you, gentlemen. I accept. As afternoon light slanted westward, Colt led her toward the edge of town. The schoolhouse stood plain but sturdy, its bell tower rising modestly. Not much compared to Eastern schools, Colt said, unlocking the door, but it's strong. Built it myself with a few hands 3 years back. Eliza stepped into a single room lined with rough-hewn desks. A blackboard stretched across one wall, sunlight streaming through wide windows. It's perfect, she whispered. Colt pointed to a narrow staircase. Your rooms are up there. Want to look? The quarters were small but serviceable. A bedroom, a little sitting space, and a kitchen corner. Out back, a porch overlooked an overgrown garden. Catherine May Dillard started that patch, Colt explained. No one's tended it since she married Jonah Pike. Eliza gazed at the mountains beyond. This small place could be hers, her first true home. I could make this comfortable. I don't doubt it. Needs a woman's touch. Colt lingered in the doorway, uncertain whether to step inside her soon-to-be home. Eliza turned toward him. I don't know how to thank you. In one day you've helped me find work, a roof, and a purpose. You don't owe me thanks. I just made a few introductions. You did the rest. He hesitated. I know it's been a whirlwind, but would you join me for supper at the hotel restaurant tonight to celebrate? She blinked in surprise. I wouldn't want to impose. It's no imposition, it's supper, unless you're too tired. His smile, rare and warm, softened his serious face. No, she answered, feeling her cheeks flush. I'd like that very much. The hotel's dining room was the fanciest in Redemption Springs, though Eastern standards would have called it modest. Still, the tables wore cloths, the cutlery matched, and the smell of roasting beef drifted from the kitchen. Though Redemption Springs Hotel was no grand ballroom, the tables wore proper linens. The cutlery matched, and the smell of roasted beef rolled thick through the room. Colt Abernathy had clearly taken time to tidy himself before calling at Martha Lou Finnegan's boarding house. His shirt was clean, a string tie knotted at his throat, his unruly curls tamed. He guided Eliza Whitlock to a table by the window, pulling out her chair with the care of a man who knew his manners, even if he didn't often get to show them. Most of the other diners, traveling salesmen, and a handful of town couples glanced their way with curiosity. They're staring. Eliza whispered. Not used to seeing me in here, I expect, Colt said, eyes glinting. Or maybe they're just admiring the company I keep. Heat crept across her cheeks. You don't eat here often, she asked. More likely at Maggie's Cafe or my own table. But the steak's worth the coin here, and the chicken's fair too. Over the meal, Eliza learned more about the quiet man who had pulled her back from despair. Colt had ridden for the Union cavalry before he was even full grown. When he returned, he found Ezekiel and Ruth Abernathy gone to influenza, leaving him to raise his younger sister until Clara Beth Abernathy wed the sheriff 5 years back. And you never married, she asked, then flushed at her boldness. Forgive me, that was forward. It's all right. Colt laid down his fork. I came close once. Girl named Annabelle Lee. Decided California had more to offer than an Arizona cowboy. She was after city lights and fine things. I'm better suited to open skies. He studied her quietly. What about you? Was it only marriage that brought you west? I wanted more than the same four walls, she admitted. Adventure, maybe? A fresh start. My parents died when I was 16, so I've made my own way since. Teaching was respectable, but lonely. She gave a wry smile. Plenty of rules about how a lady teacher ought to behave. Funny, isn't it, I came west chasing freedom and nearly ended up worse off. Nearly, Colt said firmly. Instead, you've got a roof, a post, waiting a life of your own. Thanks to your kindness. He shook his head. Thanks to your grit. Most women would have caught the next stage east. You stood your ground. I couldn't afford the fare, she confessed softly. Even so, you've got backbone. Out here, that counts for a lot. When the plates were cleared, Colt surprised her by ordering apple pie. Best you'll find in the territory, he promised. Cook learned it from Martha Lou herself. The slices arrived fragrant with cinnamon. Over dessert, Colt laid out the weeks ahead. School won't open till September, but it'll need fixing up. Desk supplies, lesson plans. I can manage that and keep on at Mrs. Ramirez's, Eliza said. The garden out back could use tending, Colt added. I'd like that. I'll help with repairs. Sundays are free for me. Not an obligation, Eliza. Just an offer. That's what neighbors do, she said softly. Walking back in the twilight, a lightness crept into her chest. Yesterday she had believed her life in ruins. Tonight something new was taking root. The boarding house windows glowed warm as lanterns. At the porch she turned. Thank you for supper. It was lovely, my pleasure. Colt hesitated, then said, Eliza, I hope you know you're not alone here. If you need anything at all, you only have to ask. The sincerity in his tone touched her. I will. And please call me Eliza. Eliza, he repeated, as if trying the name for the first time. Good night, then. Good night, Colt. He waited until she was safe inside before tipping his hat and striding into the darkness. Through the window, Eliza watched him fade from sight, marveling at the strange mercy of fate that had placed such a steadfast soul in her path. The following weeks blurred with labor. True to his word, Colt showed up every Sunday to help at the schoolhouse. Under his guidance, Eliza learned to reset loose boards, free-stuck windows, even hammer together shelves for the meager stack of books. Out back, the garden slowly revived. Colt brought seedlings, tomatoes, beans, squash from his own patch, while she sowed herbs and flowers for color. Working side by side in the summer heat, they slipped into easy rhythm. One Sunday, as he mended shingles on the roof, she called up, Where'd you learn all this farming carpentry? Colt drove a nail home before answering. My father was a jack of all trades, taught me a man ought to be able to fix or build what he needs. He sounds wise. He was. Colt's gaze grew distant. Wish he'd lived to see this town grow. He believed in it when it was nothing but shacks and scrub. And my mother, strongest woman I ever knew, came west in a wagon, carved a home from dust and sagebrush. He climbed down, dusting his hands. You remind me of her sometimes. That same grit. The words warmed Eliza, though she doubted her own strength. The weeks had tested her in ways she never imagined. Between her hours at Lola Ramirez's shop, tending the schoolhouse, and meeting the families whose children she'd soon teach, she had little time left to brood on Grant Calloway's betrayal. Evenings often found her and Colt on Martha Lou's porch, watching the sky bleed gold and crimson. Sometimes they spoke of books, far-off places, or the dreams they still carried. Other times they simply sat together in silence. "Will you miss this view when you move to the schoolhouse?" Colt asked one evening as the first stars broke through the dark. "I'll miss Martha Lou Finnegan's cooking more than the view," Eliza Whitlock teased one evening. Then her voice softened. "And these talks, they've become the best part of my days." Colt Abernathy's eyes, catching the last streak of daylight, held hers. Mine, too. The words lingered in the quiet, heavy with meaning. Neither of them dared press further. Eliza was still mending the pieces of a broken heart, and Colt, she sensed, carried his own scars when it came to matters of love. As August waned, Eliza packed her few belongings for the move into the rooms above the schoolhouse. The council had approved funds for books and supplies, and in just a week, she would face her first day as teacher. 28 students were enrolled, from wide-eyed 6-year-olds to teenagers nearly grown. Nervous Colt asked, hauling her last trunk up the narrow staircase. Terrified, she confessed, arranging her small stack of books on the shelf he had built. "What if I can't keep order? What if the older boys ignore me? What if I'm just not good enough?" "You'll manage," he said firmly, setting down her trunk. "These kids need knowledge, and you've got that to give. The rest will fall into place." "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple," Colt corrected, "but possible." He glanced around the little apartment. Eliza had worked wonders with scraps and small gifts. Curtains sewn from leftover fabric, a quilt from Martha Lou draped across the bed, wildflowers in a jar on the table. "Feels like home already," she murmured, startled to realize it was true. Since her parents' passing, no place had felt as much like hers as this did now. Colt started to speak, but a knock at the door below interrupted. Expecting anyone, he asked. "No." Eliza smoothed her skirt and hurried down Colt, close behind. On the threshold stood a stranger in a city suit hat clutched in hand. "Miss Whitlock?" he asked politely. "Yes. I come on behalf of Grant Calloway." The name struck Eliza like a fist. She felt Colt stiffen behind her. What business does Calloway have with Miss Whitlock? Colt's tone had lost all warmth. "And you are the stranger?" asked warily. "A friend," Colt said flatly. "Say what you came to say here in front of me." Eliza nodded, though her heart thudded painfully. "Please, your message." The man drew an envelope from his coat. "Mr. Calloway extends his apologies. Urgent business called him to San Francisco, and he could not send word in time. He wishes to make amends." Her fingers shook as she accepted the envelope. Inside was a bank draft enough to take her back east in comfort or secure her place in Redemption Springs. "Mr. Calloway hopes you will forgive his thoughtless actions and consider resuming your correspondence." The messenger continued. "He plans to return by year's end, and with your permission, he would call upon you then." Colt's face was unreadable, but tension radiated from him. Eliza looked down at the draft, then back at the man. Clarity settled over her. "Tell Mr. Calloway I accept his restitution for my journey," she said firmly. "But I have no intention of resuming any acquaintance. I've built a life here, a good life." The messenger blinked, surprised. "Perhaps you should take time to know." Eliza cut in, her voice steady. "My answer won't change. Thank you for delivering his message." She shut the door and leaned against it, her chest tight with mingled relief, anger, and an odd sense of closure. "You all right?" Colt asked quietly. "Yes," she answered, surprised to find it true. "You could go back east now if you wished." His voice was careful, but his eyes betrayed him the fear she might leave. "I don't want to," she said softly. "There's nothing for me there. What I want is here." The tension left Colt's shoulders. "I'm glad to hear it. I should repay your loan first thing," Eliza added, patting the draft in her pocket. "No rush?" He turned toward the door. "I should go let you settle in. Would you stay for supper? I was about to try the stove." He hesitated, then smiled. "I'd like that." That night marked a shift. In the tiny kitchen, they worked side by side, their hands brushing each accidental touch, sparking warmth beyond the stove's heat. Conversation flowed easy, but with a new undercurrent neither named. By September's first days, Eliza was firmly rooted in her new home. On opening morning, she stood before her class rows of solemn young faces, from small children to lanky teens pretending disinterest. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady. "I'm Miss Whitlock, and I'm honored to be your teacher this year." From the back, a boy of 14 called out, "Truth is, I'll miss Martha Lou Finnegan's cooking. More than anything," Eliza Whitlock joked lightly. Then her tone turned earnest. "And these talks of ours, they've become the best part of my days." Colt Abernathy's eyes caught the last glow of sunset. "Mine too." The words lingered in the quiet, neither of them ready to chase the meaning further. Eliza was still piecing herself back together after betrayal, and Colt carried his own quiet caution when it came to the heart. By the end of August, Eliza had moved her few belongings into the little rooms above the schoolhouse. With funds approved by the council, new books and supplies were on their way, and in a week's time, school would open. 28 children were enrolled from 6-year-olds just learning letters to lanky teens, finishing their last lessons before adulthood. Nervous Colt asked as he carried her final trunk up the narrow stairs. Terrified, Eliza admitted arranging her books on the shelf he had built. "What if I can't keep order? What if the older boys won't take me seriously? What if I fail them?" "You'll do fine," Colt said, setting the trunk down. "They need knowledge, and you've got plenty to share. The rest will come." "You make it sound simple." "Not simple," he corrected, "but possible." He glanced around the small apartment. Eliza had made it. Welcoming scrap fabric curtains at the windows, a quilt from Martha Lou spread across the bed, wildflowers from Sunday walks brightening the table. "Feels like home already," she said, startled by the truth of it. Colt looked as though he might say more when a knock echoed from downstairs. "Expecting anyone?" he asked. "No." Eliza smoothed her skirt and went to answer Colt close behind. On the step stood a well-dressed stranger, hat in hand. "Miss Whitlock, yes. I come with a message from Grant Calloway." The name struck Eliza like a blow. Behind her, Colt went rigid. "What business does Calloway have with Miss Whitlock?" Colt's voice was hard now. "And you are the man?" asked cautiously. "A friend," Colt replied, firm as iron. "Say it here in front of me." Eliza nodded, though her heart pounded. "Please, your message." The stranger drew out an envelope. "Mr. Calloway sends his apologies. Urgent business called him to San Francisco, and he had no chance to send word. He wishes to make amends." Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. Inside lay a bank draft, a sum large enough to buy passage east, or secure her life here. "He hopes you'll forgive his actions," the man continued, "and perhaps resume your correspondence. He intends to return by year's end, and would call on you then." Colt's face was unreadable, but tension radiated from him. Eliza looked from this draft to the messenger and found her answer. "Tell Mr. Calloway I accept his compensation for my journey," she said evenly. "But I have no wish to renew our acquaintance. I've built a life here, a good life." The messenger blinked in surprise. "Perhaps you should think—" "No," she cut in firmly. "My answer won't change. Thank you for delivering the draft." "Good day, sir." Closing the door, she leaned against it, emotions warring relief, anger, and a strange peace. "You all right?" Colt asked softly. "Yes," she said, realizing it was true. "You could go back east now." His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed worry that she might leave. "I don't want to," Eliza said gently. "There's nothing for me there. What I want is here." The tightness in Colt's shoulders eased. "Glad to hear it." "I'll repay your loan soon," she added, touching the draft in her pocket. "No rush." He moved toward the door. "I should let you get settled. Would you stay for supper? I was going to test the stove." He paused, then smiled. "I'd like that." That evening marked a quiet turning point. Working together in the small kitchen, they prepared a simple meal. Their hands brushed often each touch, sending warmth deeper than the stove's heat. Conversation flowed easily, yet with a new current neither named. By early September, Eliza was rooted in her new home. On the first morning of school, she stood before a room of children from solemn little ones to teenagers trying hard to look disinterested. "Good morning," she began. "I'm Miss Whitlock, and I'm honored to be your teacher this year." From the back row, a boy of 14 piped up. Colt Abernathy led Eliza Whitlock onto the rough plank dance floor, one hand firm at her waist, the other steady around hers as the music swept them along. "I didn't know you could dance," Eliza murmured acutely, aware of his nearness, the sure weight of his hand, the faint scent of soap and leather that clung to him. "My mama insisted," Colt said with a crooked grin. "Said no son of hers would stomp around like a buffalo at a town social. She'd be glad to see I remembered. She'd be proud of the man you've become," Eliza said softly. His eyes shadowed. "I hope so." For a while they moved together in silence, their steps easy as if they had danced this way all their lives. Then Colt's voice broke through the music. "I've been meaning to tell you. The school board asked me to serve as chairman." "That's wonderful," Eliza said sincerely. "You'll be perfect for it. Means we'll be working together in an official way. I'll look forward to it." The tune slowed, couples drifted off the floor, but Colt lingered close, his blue eyes fixed on hers. "Eliza?" His voice dropped rough with something unspoken. "Colt. There you are?" Sheriff Amos Kincaid strode up, breaking the moment. "Sorry to cut in, but we need you for the prize giving." With reluctance, Colt let her go. "Of course. Save me another dance, I will," she promised. But the chance never came. Between speeches, prizes, and the bonfire, the evening slipped away. By the time Eliza looked for him, Colt was deep in talk with ranchers. Content yet weary, she walked back toward the schoolhouse shawl, tight against the chill. Footsteps fell in behind her. She turned relieved to see Colt. "Thought you might want company," he said, falling in step. "Thank you. It's darker than I realized." They walked in quiet, the sounds of the festival fading. "It was a success," Colt said. "Folks are already talking about making your harvest festival a yearly thing. I'm glad. It felt important, something to bring people together, though I had a great deal of help." "You inspired it," he said simply. "That's a rare gift." Moonlight silvered the schoolhouse as they stopped at the steps. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" she asked, hesitant. He paused, then nodded. "Coffee would be nice." Inside, Eliza lit lamps, stoked the little stove. Colt removed his hat, standing a touch awkward in her sitting room. His eyes roamed the details. She had added embroidered cushions, a small painting from a traveling artist, framed photographs of her parents. "It suits you, Aunt," he said. "This place, it feels like a real home now. I never thought I'd feel that again after my parents passed." "Home isn't always a roof," Colt replied quietly. "Sometimes it's the feeling that you belong." When she turned, he was closer than she expected, close enough to see darker flecks in his eyes, the curl of his hair brushing his collar. "I've found that here," she whispered. "That sense of belonging." Eliza. Her name left his lips like a prayer. "What I meant to say earlier before Amos interrupted, I know it hasn't been long since you came, and I don't want to push or presume, but I can't help it. I think about you all the time. Wonder if you might see me as more than just the fellow who happened to be there when you needed help." Eliza set down the cup she was holding. "I stopped seeing you that way long ago, Colt." Hope flickered across his face. "How do you see me, then? As the man who showed me true kindness, who asked for nothing back, who made me laugh when I thought I never could again." She stepped closer. "As the man I've fallen in love with." For a heartbeat, fear twisted in her chest that she had spoken too much. Then Colt's hands cupped her face, his eyes searching hers. "I've loved you since that first Sunday," he admitted. "Working in the garden with you, watching your grit. But I thought it was too soon you needed time." "I've had time enough to know my heart," Eliza said. "And it belongs to you, Colt Abernathy." His kiss came tender, more a question than a claim. She answered with her arms around his neck, drawing him closer, until the world fell away. The coffee sat forgotten, as they stood in the lamplight, discovering each other in a new way. When at last they parted, Colt rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "It's late, and townsfolk talk." "I know." Yet she didn't let him go. "Will I see you after church tomorrow? Wild horses couldn't keep me away." He smiled, kissed her once more, then reached for his hat. "Good night, Eliza Whitlock." "Good night, Colt." At the door he paused. "Just so we're clear, I'm courting you now, proper and plain." His earnestness made her smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." After he left, Eliza stood at the window, watching his tall figure fade down the moonlit street. Her heart felt too full, brimming with a happiness she had never imagined finding in this dusty frontier town. The autumn months settled into a steady rhythm for Eliza Whitlock. Her weekdays brimmed with lessons, each new word and number mastered by her students, filling her with pride. Evenings often brought Colt Abernathy to her door, sometimes with a book he thought she'd enjoy, a jar of honey from a local beekeeper, or wildflowers he had gathered on his rides. They spent hours talking by the fire, or simply reading side by side in quiet contentment. On Sundays after church, they worked shoulder to shoulder in her garden, until the beds were tucked away for winter, then walked the outskirts of town, as Colt pointed out old landmarks, sharing stories of his boyhood in the territory. Now and then they rode double on his horse to distant places, a hidden waterfall, a mesa where the land stretched endless or ancient dwellings carved into the cliffs. Their courtship carried the dignity her role demanded. Colt was careful with her reputation, walking her home, before dark, never overstepping beyond a private kiss when no eyes were near. "You guard my good name very fiercely," Eliza teased one Sunday afternoon, as they sat by the creek near his small ranch. Strange caution from a man who once told me the rules out here were different. Colt skipped a stone across the water. "Maybe I want to do this right. You deserve that." "And what is this exactly?" she asked, breath caught. He turned serious. "A future. If that's what you want." Joy surged in her chest. "It's all I've ever wanted." December came with preparations for Christmas. The schoolhouse was alive with rehearsals for the first pageant in years, every child eager to play a part. Colt, now serving as school board chairman, attended rehearsals under the pretense of helping build scenery, but mostly stood watching Eliza with a quiet pride. "You're a natural with them," he remarked, after one particularly chaotic evening. "Even with young Samuel Peterson forgetting his lines a third time. He's trying hard," Eliza said, defending her most challenging student. "And he's come so far. That's your doing." Colt took her hand, something they now allowed themselves on evening walks. You've got a way of seeing the best in folks. You even saw something in me worth believing in. You made that easy, she replied warmly. As they walked, Colt cleared his throat. Speaking of Christmas, Mrs. Finnegan has asked us both for Christmas dinner. I'd be honored, Eliza said. Colt hesitated, looking almost shy. I was hoping you'd also come to my place on Christmas Eve. Nothing grand, just a tradition of mine watching the stars. My folks always said they shine brighter that night. Eliza smiled softly. I'd love that. The night of the pageant brought a dusting of snow rare enough in Arizona to feel like a blessing. The schoolhouse was packed tight benches filled with proud parents and townsfolk. Children recited their parts, stumbled through lines, and even a wandering sheep costume couldn't spoil the charm. The play ended to thunderous applause. Speech someone called. Eliza stepped forward in her green wool dress, the one she had splurged on for the night. Thank you all for coming. I'm proud of these children, and the hard work they've done. When I first came to Redemption Springs, I never dreamed how quickly this place would feel like home, or how dear you all would become to me. Sometimes blessings come from the most unexpected of beginnings. I was meant to find my way here to this school, to this community. Her voice softened. To all of you, Merry Christmas. The crowd cheered, and even Sheriff Amos Kincaid declared it the finest pageant the town had ever seen. Afterward, the schoolroom bustled with refreshments and congratulations. Through it all, Colt stayed close, steady as a shadow at her side. It was near midnight when the last family departed. Eliza sagged into a chair, drained but happy. You did it, Colt said, sitting beside her. Quite the triumph for your first term. Our students did it, she replied, resting her head against his shoulder, propriety forgotten in her fatigue. Thank you for staying to help. Wouldn't be anywhere else. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. You should rest. I'll help finish, she said, fighting a yawn. Always determined, he chuckled, reaching into his pocket. I meant to wait until Christmas Eve, he admitted. But watching you tonight, seeing all you've done, how much you mean to this town. To me, I can't hold it back. Eliza's breath caught as he drew out a small box. Colt, Eliza Whitlock, he said, steady, though his eyes shone. When you came here, you were waiting for someone who never deserved you. I found you that day broken-hearted and alone. But truth is, I think I'm the one who found home. This ring belonged to my mother. She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman with the same strength and heart she had. He took her hand. I've found that woman in you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, with all my heart. Colt slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band of gold crowned with a small pearl. Then he kissed her tender and certain, sealing every promise their future held. When they broke apart, both were smiling through tears. I love you, Colt Abernathy, she said. I never expected to find you, Eliza Whitlock whispered. But now I can't imagine life without you. You'll never have to, Colt Abernathy promised. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Christmas Eve found them wrapped in blankets on the porch of Colt's modest ranch house, watching stars prick the velvet sky. The cabin behind them was simple but sturdy, solid walls, a good roof, the place that would be their home after the spring wedding they had planned. My pa always said the stars on Christmas Eve were angels keeping watch. Colt murmured, his arm snug around her. As a boy, I thought it was just a story. Tonight, I almost believe it. Eliza leaned into him, her hand with the pearl ring resting over his heart. I think angels walk among us every day, people who step in right when we need them most. Colt kissed her hair. Like a teacher who comes west and changes a whole town. Like a cowboy who stops to help a heartbroken bride, she countered softly. They fell quiet, content with the hush of winter and the spread of stars. Tomorrow would bring Christmas with their neighbor's family by choice. The new year would bring wedding plans and the life waiting to be built. But tonight was only theirs, two souls who had found each other against the odds in Arizona's wide frontier. "Merry Christmas, my love," Colt whispered. "Merry Christmas," Eliza replied, lifting her lips for his kiss beneath the stars. Spring burst into Redemption Springs with wild flowers and new beginnings. The schoolhouse was trimmed with ribbons for the wedding. The whole town gathered to see their beloved teacher wed the man who had first welcomed her. Eliza scarcely recognized the radiant woman in the mirror. Her dress, sewn by Dolores Lola Ramirez with help from townswomen, was simple yet elegant embroidery tracing the neckline and hem. A crown of blossoms picked by her students that morning graced her hair. "You look beautiful," Martha Lou Finnegan said, adjusting her veil. "Colt won't know what hit him." Eliza smiled, remembering the dusty day she'd sat broken-hearted on a crate. "I can hardly believe this is real." "Believe it, dear." "You've earned this joy," Martha Lou said, checking the clock. "It's time. Ready to be. Mrs. Abernathy, more than ready." The ceremony was plain, but stirring. Colt, handsome in a new suit, watched her walk down the aisle on Sheriff Amos Kincaid's arm with eyes full of devotion. Their vows rang clear, promising to stand together through whatever life might hold, when the minister declared them man and wife. Colt's kiss was tender, yet drawing cheers from neighbors and friends. Eliza's heart nearly burst as they turned to face the crowd as husband and wife. The celebration lasted late, filled with dancing, feasting, and laughter, until her cheeks ached. As dusk deepened, Colt drew her away toward their ranch, the house they had readied together. At the threshold, he swept her into his arms. "Welcome home, Mrs. Abernathy," he whispered. "Home." Eliza breathed the word, carrying every meaning they had built together. "It sounds perfect." Later, as they lay entwined, Eliza thought of the twist of fate that had brought her west. What began as heartbreak had led to this man, this life, far richer than she had dared to dream. "What's on your mind?" Colt asked, brushing her hair back. "That sometimes the best things start from the most unexpected endings." She traced his jaw. "I came chasing one dream and found a better one waiting. We'll build that dream together," Colt vowed, day by day. And they did. The years that followed brought both trials and blessings. Under Eliza's hand, the school grew so large that a second teacher was hired and a bigger building raised. Colt's reputation as a horseman spread across the territory, bringing prosperity. Their family grew too, a daughter Emma, with her father's blue eyes, and 2 years later a son William, with his mother's quiet resolve. The little ranch house stretched with each new addition boards set in place by Colt's own hands. Yet Eliza never forgot that first day of despair on a crate outside the mercantile, nor the man who had knelt beside her and changed her life. Each anniversary they walked to that very spot. Colt would kneel again, this time in jest, saying, "Luckiest day of my life, finding a heartbroken bride who became the heart of my home." And Eliza, gazing at the man who had taught her what true love meant, could only agree. From that broken beginning had come the greatest blessing of all, a love that not only reshaped 2 lives, but uplifted a whole community, proving that sometimes the end of one dream is simply the start of a far better one. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you